So Breaths, Lined in Silver. This was released on the 26th of March earlier on this year. It's similar to the previous album that we've just covered. It contains quite a small number of songs. It contains 8 songs, but is again quite long. It's an hour long. So all the songs are pretty lengthy. The shortest being track number 2, The Weight in the Bellows, clocking in at around the kind of 5.5 minutes. However, there's enough variation in each of the songs without them kind of overstaying their welcome or becoming overly repetitive. I think there's times where you could be forgiven for thinking that they're different songs sometimes. Breaths is a purely one-man band based out of Richmond, Virginia in the USA. It's the artist's debut album. However, it's worth noting that his second album, which is entitled Though Life Has Turned Out Nothing Like I Imagined, It's Far Better Than I Could Have Dreamt, is due to be released on the 21st of January next year and is already available for pre-order on his Bandcamp page. So according to his Bandcamp page, the artist draws inspiration from elements of post-metal, black metal, doom metal, shoegaze, progressive metal and post-hardcore. And, I think that's a pretty apt description. Yeah. There's a bit of everything in here. I particularly enjoyed the kind of juxtaposition between what I would have described as pretty typical, maybe post-hardcore, clean vocals and that black metal grunts and shrieks that you hear throughout the course of the album. I think neither is overdone, and I think they kind of complement each other really well. And that was a bit of a kind of standout element of the album for me. I think the instrumentation is really slick, really well conceived. Feel like kind of thundering kind of drum lines which kind of chug along and really help drive the songs. However, we do occasionally get kind of respite from this. There's a lot of that quiet, loud moments, as you've kind of just mentioned, as well as times where the instrumentation melts away to create some space for some really introspective sounding, ethereal and emotive soundscapes. As well, kind of keeping with the idea of, the kind of shoegaze element. There's plenty of kind of noodling guitar pieces, but there's times where they really kind of pack a punch when needed. What was your thoughts, man? What did you think?
Yeah, I really like that kind of mixture of like doom and shoegaze, and of course the black metal vocals I think are like you said, they're not overdone. They don't sound cheesy.
Because that would put me off.
Yeah, they're very convincing, and I think the sort of melodic vocals are really good as well. And that kind of reminded me of, well, when they submitted this, it said like it's recommended for fans of Deftones, The Ocean, Holy Fawn, Sleep Token, and Mountaineer. And Sleep Token being a sort of really modern, more sort of contemporary example, I think you immediately get that kind of similarity with the vocals, although I would say that I far prefer Jason's vocals here than I do. I don't know if you're familiar with Sleep Token, but I far prefer Jason's vocals than I do the warbling of the guy from Sleep Token. They're not a band I'm really that fond of, but I can see why the comparison's been brought there. But in terms of those melodic vocals, you mentioned sort of post-hardcore. I was listening to a lot of melodic hardcore and post-hardcore bands in my teenage years. Bands like Silverstein, Hawthorne Heights, maybe even a bit of Thrice, they had that kind of melodic vocals, then, leaning into sort of more heavy, screamed passages and crescendos. So certainly with the vocal side of things, the melodic vocals in that way, they sort of jump between the melodic parts and the heavier, more aggressive parts. It doesn't really remind me of those bands. It's just kind of the way. I suppose the vocals do remind me of those bands, but the songs don't.
Right.
Because you've got that. It's black metal. It's not really post-hardcore style of songs. But I think just the way that the drums and the guitars and the savage kind of black metal screams and those melodic parts and how they're all kind of constructed and sort of bounce off of each other, I think is really well done. The opening track, the title track, Lined in Silver, is really impressive. He can obviously sing, because those first few bars is just clean singing, really great clean singing.
Yeah.
It starts to get heavy. But yeah, I enjoyed this album a lot. The second track, The Weight in the Bellows, it's got this kind of creeping dread vibe as it starts off, and it's got these cool sort of scattergun drums, and it feels very epic.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of epic and engaging moments throughout the course of this album. I mean, I've kind of picked out, I'm obviously quite a fan of my bass lines and what have you. And in track number 3, Like Wires, that bass at the very end that you get treated to is just, I just loved it. I mean, it's really, really short-lived, but I really enjoyed it. There's some kind of scream metal baby vocals. I think it's a baby that it's his daughter, maybe. And he's just obviously taken a sample of her speaking, but put some effect on it, and it's pretty cool. I quite like that. Because you get that in the first song as well, but I mean, I think there's no effects on it, but it is a sample of, one of his children.
Yeah, at the end of the first track.
Yeah.
I didn't notice it was like on that third song. I didn't really notice it was like
honestly, it's just at the very end.
Is it? That, Like Wires, is the one that reminded me the most of Deftones, just because of the vocals there sounded a lot like Chino Marino. And I'm not a fan of Chino Marino. I don't really like Deftones that much, mostly because of his vocals. But I think Like Wires was good. And there's like the black metal screams sort of swirl around in the background as well. And yeah, there's some pretty chunky riffs on that track. Well, I mean, there's chunky riffs all over the album, to be fair. I think A Year on Fire, the next track, leans even more into the kind of extreme side of things. It opens with a far more like crushing, churning riff, and the black metal vocals come in pretty much straight away. So it's like probably the heaviest opening, at least so far on the album. But it's still got those kind of haunting, like crooning shoegaze guitars in the background as well, which is really cool. And they sort of take over towards the end of it. So yeah, I like all those different elements and how they've been put together.
Yeah, is it the 5th track? In Nightmares. I loved that. That was just yeah, I thought it was epic. As you said, loads of epic kind of moments in this album. That kind of guitar riff, that combination of that kind of guitar riff and the electronics from around the 3-minute mark to about the 4-5 minute mark. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, there's like a real shimmer to the guitars on that song, and there's kind of echo to the vocals as well. It's really kind of, I mean, it opens like full on doom song, like it's just like long and drawn out and moody, and then it's got these kind of the shimmer to the guitar and the echo to the vocals, and that's a 12-minute long song as well. It's just like, normally I'm like, fucking 12 minutes, like that's far too long, but you just get kind of drawn into.
Just get swept away, don't you?
Yeah, so that's a good way of putting it, getting swept away. Yes, I like the last 4 minutes of that song are pretty awesome. Like, there's a sort of bit where the guitars go totally clean and the vocals kind of soar, and there's like a really cool drum rhythm, and there's almost like a beatdown section near the end where the heaviness kind of comes back in. It's really good, really good. It's a journey.
Aye, that's a good way of putting it, actually.
It's a journey. Yeah, I mean, there's more sort of Deftonesy bits on the Forgotten Ones. The Inherent Emptiness, the vocals go pretty much full on Dustin Kensrue from Thrice, which is never a bad thing. And it's got like these really evil vocal screams and growls on it, and some pretty cool like synth sounds. I think could just be like modulated guitars, but they're pretty cool. And the sort of closing track, In Repose, goes full circle and is almost like a more subdued version of the opening track, Lined in Silver. And by the time that song ends, it's kind of gone back to the sort of big crashing heavy part from that first song, which is a nice way to end out the song and the album.
What was your feeling? What did you rate it?
So I have given it an 8 out of 10. I think there's a lot of good stuff. It's really melodic, it's crushingly heavy, and it's long-winded at 60 minutes long, but it's really accessible because it's really well produced and really well put together, I think.
I was the same, mate. I give it an 8 out of 10.
And it's the same as I said about the previous album, that loud, quiet, heavy as fuck kind of dynamic, I think, is really good and done to great effect. Cool. Okay, so that was Lined in Silver by Breaths.
feel